If you've ever been made to feel that you're stupid or unintelligent or that you're not smart enough to do something, then this video is for you. I want to share with you some signs that can show you that you're smarter than you think you are, even if it doesn't feel like it. And hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a little bit more self-belief and a bit more self-confidence. A lot of us lack the belief that we're smart or intelligent because society pushes this idea that there's only one type of intelligence that matters. We're fed this idea that only the traditional type of intelligence, sometimes referred to as logical mathematical intelligence, is the type of intelligence that counts. And logical mathematical intelligence refers to our ability to think logically, to reason, and to make connections between different things. People with a high level of logical mathematical intelligence, like Albert Einstein, for example, are really good at working with numbers, they're good at working with abstract ideas, and they're also really good at things like scientific investigations. And it's this type of intelligence that's often measured on standardized intelligence tests like the IQ test. However, there is a theory out there that this is not the only type of intelligence that we have. According to psychologist Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, there are actually 8 other intelligences too. I'm going to introduce you to those 9 different types of intelligence, and I'm going to show you some signs that can show that you're intelligent in that type of way. The first type of intelligence is the traditional one we just spoke about, which is logical mathematical intelligence. So if you're someone with a high level of logical mathematical intelligence, then you're probably good at these following things. You're great at solving mathematical problems and puzzles, and you're usually good at being able to find creative solutions to those problems. You probably also have a fascination with patterns, and you're probably able to identify patterns not only in things like data, but also in everyday life. You may also be interested in games, particularly games that require strategic thinking, like Sudoku or chess. You're comfortable with numbers, you have a natural affinity towards them, whether it's in work or in your normal day-to-day life. You think analytically, and you probably approach problems systematically, breaking them down into their component parts and then looking at each component and analyzing that component. You're curious about the way things work, and you want to understand the root behind how they actually function, so you may be more drawn to things like physics or programming or engineering. So this logical mathematical intelligence is the type of intelligence that's highly coveted in society today, and many psychologists consider this to be the only type of intelligence that we hold, and because of that, it's been placed on this pedestal as the ultimate form of intellectual status. But logical mathematical intelligence is not the only type of intelligence, or if you want to call it smarts, that make the world go round. There are so many components of our lives that we enjoy the most, like games, music, friendships, romantic relationships, design, clothes. All of these things do not stem from logical mathematical intelligence alone. It's not the only thing that's important, and it's not the only way to be smart. And I think a lot of naturally intelligent people lose sight of that because of their over-reliance and overconfidence in their natural intelligence. The idea that sometimes being too traditionally intelligent can in fact make you act in unintelligent ways is the concept behind the book that I'm currently reading, called The Intelligence Trap by science journalist David Robson. And David talks about how since the beginning of the 20th century, psychologists have measured a relatively small set of abstract skills when it comes to intelligence. For example, factual recall, analogical reasoning, and vocabulary. And they believed that these skills alone reflected a sort of general intelligence that underlies every type of thinking or problem solving or creative skill or ability that we have. But David also identifies that there's some newer research starting to come out that shows there's fundamental flaws and serious problems with this type of thinking as it relates to intelligence. And the findings of this research has even led to a new discipline being formed called evidence-based wisdom. And I think this is where you can start to make an argument for the 8 other types of intelligence. Whether you do actually refer to these other types of intelligence as intelligence, or you prefer to think of them as smart or skills or abilities, it doesn't really matter. The point is that many of them actually have a very significant factor to play when it comes to determining how successful or how happy we are. And one of those components that make our lives happy and worthwhile is relationships. And that's where the second type of intelligence comes in. That's called interpersonal intelligence. People with a high level of interpersonal intelligence are really good at interacting and understanding other people. And I would strongly argue, and you may even disagree with me here, but I would say that in some aspects of society, having a high interpersonal intelligence is probably even more important than having a high logical mathematical intelligence. For example, in leadership, in marketing, in sales, in business as a whole, in romantic relationships, in friendships, in family, all of those benefit way more from interpersonal intelligence than they do from logical mathematical intelligence. in most cases. And interpersonal intelligence, or even the lack of it, can have a huge effect on those different aspects of life or business or work or whatever. So some signs that you have a high level of interpersonal intelligence can include things like you're empathetic, so you can understand people's emotions really well, you can put yourself in their shoes, you have compassion for other people. And unfortunately, I do think empathy tends to get a bad rep, particularly amongst communities of traditionally intelligent people, because they often see it as a soft skill, and they can often see it as a skill that they don't need to acquire or try and strengthen because it's not really important for them to do that. They find it unnecessary, or they think someone else will pick up the slack and I'll be the intelligent one, you can be the empathetic one. But with the widely accepted rise of emotional intelligence, or EQ, more and more people are beginning to understand the importance and the impact that interpersonal traits such as empathy can have not only on personal relationships, but also in workplace culture too, such as in leadership and in business. Being empathetic is no longer considered a weakness or a nice to have. It's now becoming a necessity. Other signs of high interpersonal intelligence can also include having effective communication skills. So for example, being able to express difficult topics in an easy to understand way. Being good at conflict resolution is another good sign as well. So if you're often finding yourself like piggy in the middle, trying to resolve all the conflicts around you, then that's a sign that you probably have a high level of interpersonal intelligence. But it's not only the relationships with other people that can dictate our intelligence according to Gardner's theory, but also the relationship that we have with ourselves. And that's where the third type of intelligence comes in, intrapersonal intelligence. If you have a high level of intrapersonal intelligence, then you probably have a high level of self-awareness. You understand your own emotions and your desires very, very well. You can probably easily recognize your strengths and your weaknesses really well, and you can probably predict your own reactions and emotions in particular scenarios. You might also be good at self-regulation, so being able to recognize and deal with your emotions really well. You may be good at setting goals and have a very clear vision of where you want to go in the future. And you're probably also introspective, so you spend a lot of time thinking and being in your head. The remaining 5 types of intelligence include linguistic verbal intelligence, which can manifest itself as being able to think in words and use language really effectively and creatively, having a love for reading or writing or learning languages, being really good at explaining things or teaching or storytelling, and enjoying word-based jokes, riddles, and puzzles. I have to say, if I'm intelligent in any way, it's probably this one. Then we have musical intelligence, and that can show up as you having sensitivity to things like rhythm, pitch, meter. You're probably really good at playing instruments or singing. You might be able to learn songs quite quickly or notice patterns in rhythms and music really quickly as well. And you may be even able to create and compose really complex musical compositions. Then we have bodily kinesthetic. Then we have bodily kinesthetic intelligence, and that can show up as having a high degree of dexterity, flexibility, agility, things like that. You might be really good at physical activities like certain sports or dancing or acting. You usually learn better by doing rather than being told or being shown what to do. And you probably have a high degree of hand-eye coordination, and you're quite skilled at just using your hands in general. Not like that. Next, we have spatial intelligence, and signs of that can be being able to think in images and pictures and being able to visualize things in your mind quite accurately or abstractly. You're probably good at reading maps or charts or diagrams. You may be skilled at painting or drawing or just creating art in general. And you may be easily able to visualize objects from different perspectives and angles. The next 2, I'm not quite sure how I feel about them, but it's interesting nonetheless to hear about them. The 8th type of intelligence in this theory is naturalist intelligence. And signs of that can include things like being able to recognize and correctly categorize different plants and animals in their natural environment and habitats. You may have a sensitivity to certain features of the environment, such as the weather or geological formations, which, yeah, I'm not really quite sure what that means, and I'm not sure how I feel about that being a type of intelligence, but interesting nonetheless. And you may be someone who probably likes to enjoy being outside or outdoor activities, things like that. If you feel like you have this type of intelligence, please let me know in the comments below, because I would be really interested to hear how that feels for you. And last but not least, we have existential intelligence. And signs of having this type of intelligence can include the following: being able to ponder deep questions about life, death, and existence in general. You may have a thoughtful and curious nature, and you think a lot about the world and human existence. You really enjoy and you try and have as many philosophical and deep discussions as possible about things like this. And you're probably someone who's quite reflective and introspective, and you spend a lot of time in your head pondering these very deep existential questions. We likely all have some level of these types of intelligence or smarts, but like I mentioned at the start, this is currently just a theory, and there are quite a few psychologists out there that deny the existence of these different types of intelligence right now because there's no research to prove that they exist. But that being said, even as someone who is very deeply passionate about science and having research-backed evidence for everything that you say, basically, I also know that having been in the medical field myself, there have been moments where something that we've once believed to be true was later debunked by other types of research. So just because we haven't proven something to be true yet doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. That's a very dangerous path to go down. Please take that with a pinch of salt. Please don't go out there becoming a conspiracy theorist, because that's not what I'm trying to do here. Just to say, keep a little bit of an open mind when it comes to these things. So if you're someone who doesn't think they have a high level of logical mathematical intelligence, maybe you don't score very highly on standardized IQ tests, then this is just a reminder that there are different types of ways that you can be creative or skillful or have abilities and smarts that can help you succeed in life, because not every successful person has a very high IQ. And many people who do have very high IQs are probably not the ones that we are seeing as the most successful people in the world. I don't know, like, yeah, Elon Musk maybe, and what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg. Yes, some of them do, but a lot of them are also people who get there through different qualities and different skills of leadership and business and whatnot. It depends what area of life you're looking at. But the point is that this is not the most important and the only thing that matters in life. And if you are someone who has a high level of logical mathematical intelligence, I do recommend that you read this book, The Intelligence Trap. I haven't finished it yet, but it's a really good way to try and identify the biases in your own intelligence and stop yourself from acting in what he calls unintelligent ways, or really stupid ways that ends up harming other people or even harming you in return. It's good from time to time to ask yourself what the quality of your relationships are like. Are you being empathetic? Do people respect you? Do people want to be around you? Because whilst you may think that your type of intelligence is the only type of intelligence that counts, we are actually social animals. We're humans and we need connection to survive. So if you're not able to connect with other people well because you lack skills in all these other departments, then I probably assume that your quality of life isn't going to be as high as maybe someone who does have those skills. So my loves, don't be disheartened if you feel like you can't out-debate someone, or you can't solve a complicated logical mathematical problem, or you can't finish a puzzle, or like all these things that make us feel like we're less than, because that's not the only thing that is important. And you probably have skills and abilities in other aspects of life that are serving you very well and that you should focus on. And I don't mean that in a patronizing way, like, oh, just focus on what you're good at because you're dumb. No, I don't mean it like that. I just mean don't underestimate yourself just because you are not currently fitting the mold of what society thinks is the most intelligent of us. And none of this is set in stone. There are ways that you can improve your logical mathematical intelligence as well with practice. And I'm sure that if you continue to practice doing IQ tests over time, you will get higher scores. So there's nothing that's like very, very hard written in stone that you can't improve. And that's why upskilling and personal development, in my opinion, is such an important part of life, because to me, there's nothing more boring than coasting along, never feeling like I'm growing. That's why I created this video on why personal development is so important. But that's just me. That's how I feel. Not everyone else feels that way. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below. Tell me which type of intelligence you think you are strongest or have strongest abilities in, because I would love to hear it, especially if you are one of the last 3 or 4 intelligences. I would really want to know what your experience is like. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next video.